The city had never felt this hot. A brutal summer heat wave rolled through the streets like a living thing, pressing against windows, creeping into hallways, and suffocating every corner of the luxury hotel where Elena worked. The power had flickered twice already that evening, leaving half the building in darkness. Elena wiped the sweat from her forehead as she climbed the final flight of stairs toward the penthouse spa level. The elevators were down again, and the upper floors were supposed to be empty for maintenance. At least that's what she had been told. Just 5 minutes, she murmured to herself. The penthouse spa was supposed to be closed tonight, but Elena knew the security code. After 12 hours serving demanding guests and dealing with the heat, she just needed a quiet place to breathe. She pushed open the door. The room was dim, lit only by moonlight pouring through tall glass windows overlooking the glowing city skyline. The blackout had taken the lights here too, leaving the marble floor cool beneath her feet. Silence. Perfect silence. Elena let out a relieved breath. The air near the open window carried the faint promise of a breeze. Desperate to cool down, she slipped off her damp uniform and stepped closer to the window, letting the night air brush against her skin. For the first time all day, her muscles relaxed. "I thought I was alone," she whispered softly to herself. A calm voice answered from somewhere behind her. "You're not." The words froze the air. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs as she spun around. At first she saw nothing, just shadows stretching across the dark room. Then a figure moved. A tall man stepped forward from the corner of the room where darkness had been hiding him. The faint moonlight revealed sharp features, broad shoulders, and eyes that watched her with unsettling calm. He hadn't moved when she entered. He had been standing there the entire time. Speechless. Observing. Elena's breath caught in her throat as the stranger's voice broke the silence again. Low, steady, and impossible to ignore. "You shouldn't be here." And somehow, the way he said it made her feel like she had just walked into the territory of a very dangerous man. The man who owned the building. The man the entire city whispered about. The Mafia boss himself. And now, they were alone in the dark. Smiling face with horns. Elena's heart pounded so loudly she was certain the stranger could hear it. For a moment, neither of them moved. The moonlight from the tall windows barely illuminated the room, but it was enough for Elena to see the outline of the man standing across from her. He was tall, taller than anyone she'd ever worked with at the hotel, and carried himself with a calm confidence that made the entire space feel smaller. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't embarrassed. He was simply watching her. Elena instinctively stepped back, grabbing a nearby towel and wrapping it tightly around herself. Her face burned with humiliation. I didn't know anyone was here," she stammered. The man tilted his head slightly, studying her reaction. "That's obvious," he said calmly. His voice was deep, controlled, and strangely quiet for someone who had just witnessed a complete stranger walk in like that. Elena's mind raced. Guests weren't allowed on this floor tonight. The penthouse spa had been closed all evening. That meant only one thing. Whoever this man was, he wasn't supposed to be here either. "Look, I work here," Elena said quickly, trying to recover some dignity. "The building lost power and I thought this level was empty." The man finally stepped fully into the moonlight. And Elena's stomach dropped. Even in the dim light, his presence was unmistakable: sharp dark suit, expensive watch, and the kind of cold composure that belonged to someone used to being obeyed. She had seen his face before. Not in person. In whispers. In stories passed between hotel staff when they thought management wasn't listening. Luca Romano. The man who secretly owned half the city's most expensive properties. The man people lowered their voices to talk about. The Mafia boss. Elena's breath caught. "You own this building," she said slowly. A faint smile touched Luca's lips, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "And you," he replied, glancing toward the door she had entered through, "just walked into a private floor that was supposed to be sealed." Her stomach tightened. Suddenly this wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous. But Luca didn't look angry. If anything, he looked curious. Before Elena could say another word, a soft buzzing sound vibrated from the phone in Luca's hand. He glanced at the screen. For the first time since she'd walked in, his calm expression hardened. Then he muttered something under his breath. "That's not good." Elena swallowed nervously. "What's not good?" Luca looked up at her, his dark eyes suddenly sharp. "It seems," he said slowly, "that you and I are no longer the only ones in this building tonight. And whoever else had entered wasn't here for a spa." Smiling face with horns. Elena felt the temperature in the room drop. Not because the heat wave outside had faded, but because of the sudden tension in Luca Romano's face. He stared at his phone for a moment longer, reading whatever message had appeared on the screen. His jaw tightened slightly. "Elena," he said calmly. Hearing her name in his voice startled her. "You know my name?" Luca glanced toward the door she had entered earlier. "Hotel employees wear name tags," he replied simply. "Right. Of course." But something about the way he said it made Elena feel like he had noticed far more about her than just that. "What's happening?" she asked nervously. Luca slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward the window, looking down at the dark city streets below. "My security team just sent a warning," he said. Elena hugged the towel closer around herself. "Warning about what?" Luca turned back to face her. "About visitors." Her stomach twisted. "I thought you said this floor was sealed." It was. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Elena heard something. A faint metallic sound. Somewhere out in the hallway. Footsteps. Her eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" Luca had already heard it. His head tilted slightly, listening carefully. More footsteps followed. Slow. Careful. Like someone searching. Elena's heart began racing. "Those aren't hotel staff, are they?" she whispered. "No," Luca said quietly. He moved quickly now, his calm turning into focused action. He crossed the room and gently guided Elena toward a wall near the spa lockers. "You need to stay quiet," he told her. "Why?" His eyes met hers. Because the answer was obvious. "If the men outside see you," he said, his voice low, "they'll know you witnessed something you shouldn't have." Elena's pulse pounded in her ears. "I didn't see anything." "That won't matter to them." The footsteps outside grew louder. Someone tried a door further down the hallway. Locked. Another handle rattled. Locked again. Elena's breathing quickened. "Who are they?" she whispered. Luca's expression darkened. "Rivals." The word alone sent chills down her spine. Then the hallway went silent. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Until... click. A door somewhere on the floor opened. Elena grabbed Luca's arm instinctively. "They're getting closer," she whispered. Luca didn't move. But the look in his eyes had changed. Cold. Calculating. Dangerous. Then he leaned closer and murmured something that made Elena's blood run cold. "Which means," he said quietly, "you're staying with me tonight." Because if those men found her, she wouldn't make it out of the building alive. Smiling face with horns. The hallway outside fell quiet again. Too quiet. Elena held her breath, gripping the edge of the locker beside her. Every sound in the room suddenly felt louder, the faint hum of the city outside, the distant creak of the building, even her own heartbeat. Luca moved silently across the spa floor, his eyes scanning the room. "How many?" she whispered. "At least 4, he replied. Her stomach twisted. 4. Luca nodded once. "Maybe more." Elena felt her knees weaken. "Why would they come here?" she asked. Luca glanced toward the door again before lowering his voice. "Because they know I'm here tonight." The words hit her like a wave of cold water. "They came for you?" "Yes." Before Elena could react, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed again in the hallway. Closer this time. Someone stopped directly outside the spa entrance. The door handle moved slightly. Elena froze. The door didn't open. Instead, a low voice spoke from outside. "Check the next room." The footsteps moved away again. Elena released the breath she had been holding. But Luca didn't relax. In fact, he seemed even more focused now. "We don't have much time," he said quietly. He walked toward one of the large wooden cabinets near the back wall of the spa and opened it. Inside was a narrow hidden passage, barely wide enough for one person. Elena stared. "A secret door." "Emergency exit," Luca replied. He turned back to her. "You'll stay here." Her eyes widened. "Alone?" "Yes." "No way," she whispered, shaking her head. "Those men are walking around with weapons and you want me hiding in a cabinet." Luca stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "They won't check here." "How do you know?" "Because I designed this floor." The words carried quiet authority. But Elena's fear was still rising. "What are you going to do?" Luca paused. Then he gave her a look that made her chest tighten. "I'm going to make sure they don't reach this room." Her heart skipped. "You mean fight them?" Luca didn't answer. He didn't need to. Another door slammed somewhere down the hallway. The search was getting closer again. Luca gently took Elena's shoulders and guided her toward the hidden space. "You trust me?" he asked softly. Elena hesitated. She barely knew this man. The Mafia boss everyone feared. But right now, he was the only thing standing between her and the men outside. Slowly, she nodded. Luca gave a small approving nod. Good. He closed the cabinet door most of the way, leaving only a small opening so she could breathe. Just before shutting it completely, he leaned closer and spoke one last time. No matter what you hear, he said quietly, do not come out. Then the door closed. And seconds later, Elena heard the spa door open. Smiling face with horns. From inside the narrow hidden space, Elena could barely breathe. The small gap in the cabinet door allowed her to see only a sliver of the spa floor. Moonlight still spilled through the tall windows, casting pale shadows across the marble tiles. Then the spa door creaked open. Heavy footsteps entered the room. Elena's heart began pounding so hard she was sure the men could hear it. Well, a rough voice said. Looks like we found him. Through the narrow opening, Elena saw two men first. Then a third. All dressed in dark clothes. One of them held a handgun loosely at his side. Luca stood near the center of the room, completely calm. You're trespassing, he said quietly. One of the men laughed. Still arrogant, Romano. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Hearing Luca's name spoken like that made the situation terrifyingly real. The man with the gun stepped closer. Our boss sends his regards, he said. And a message. Luca's expression didn't change. Let me guess, he replied. The message involves killing me. The man smirked. Something like that. The room fell silent for a moment. Elena's fingers tightened around the wooden edge of the cabinet. Then Luca spoke again. You brought 3 men to face me? He asked calmly. The gunman frowned slightly. Why? Luca's voice was almost amused. That seems optimistic. Before the man could react, Luca moved. Fast. Elena barely saw it happen. One moment Luca was standing still. The next, he had grabbed the gunman's wrist and twisted it sharply. The weapon clattered across the marble floor. A punch landed. One man dropped instantly. The second lunged forward, but Luca drove him backward into a table, sending glass crashing across the room. Elena covered her mouth to keep from gasping. Everything was happening so quickly. Within seconds, 2 of the men were on the floor. But the third had pulled a knife. You should have stayed hidden tonight, Romano, he shouted. The knife flashed in the dim light as he charged forward. Elena's pulse spiked. But Luca didn't step back. He stepped toward him. The struggle lasted only seconds. Then the knife clattered to the floor. And silence returned to the spa. The remaining man groaned on the ground. Luca stood over them, breathing steadily. Then the fallen man laughed weakly. You're too late anyway, he muttered. Luca's eyes narrowed. Too late for what? The man smiled through blood. There are more of us in the building. Elena felt ice crawl down her spine. Because if that was true, this night was far from over. Smiling face with horns. For several seconds, the spa remained completely silent. Elena barely dared to breathe inside the cabinet. Through the small gap, she could see Luca standing over the defeated men on the floor. The moonlight cast sharp shadows across his face, making his expression look colder than before. Luca slowly crouched beside the man who had spoken. You said there are more of you, Luca said quietly. The injured man laughed weakly. You think we'd come after you with just 3 men? Luca's jaw tightened. How many? The man smirked through the pain. Enough. Before Luca could ask another question, the man suddenly lost consciousness. Luca stood again, clearly thinking. Then he walked toward the cabinet. Elena quickly pulled back as the door opened. You can come out now, he said. She stepped out carefully, still clutching the towel around herself. Her eyes widened when she saw the 3 men lying across the spa floor. You did that, alone? She whispered. Luca ignored the question. Instead, he walked toward the window and looked down at the dark streets below. Elena followed his gaze. Flashing headlights moved near the hotel entrance. Several black vehicles. Her stomach dropped. Are those? Yes, Luca said quietly. My rivals. Elena felt the room spin slightly. So they're not just in the building. They're surrounding it. Her pulse raced. But the police? They won't come, Luca said flatly. The realization hit her instantly. Powerful men like Luca didn't operate in places where the police could easily interfere. Which meant they were truly alone. What do we do? Elena asked. For the first time that night, Luca seemed to hesitate. Then he turned to her. We leave. Elena blinked. How? The elevators are out, the stairwells are probably blocked, and there are men downstairs waiting. Luca walked to another wall inside the spa and pressed his hand against a panel Elena hadn't noticed before. With a quiet click, part of the wall shifted open. Another hidden passage. Elena stared. How many secret doors does this place have? Enough, Luca replied. He grabbed a small flashlight from a nearby cabinet and handed it to her. This tunnel leads to a private garage 2 blocks away. Elena looked at the dark passage stretching downward. And the men in the building? Luca's eyes hardened. They'll be searching every floor soon. He stepped closer to her. So if you want to survive tonight. He held out his hand. You're coming with me. Elena hesitated for only a second. Then she took his hand. And together, they stepped into the darkness. Smiling face with horns. The hidden passage was narrow and smelled faintly of dust and old stone. Elena's hand tightened around Luca's as they moved silently, her heart hammering in her chest. Every creak of the floor above made her jump. How long is this tunnel? She whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. Long enough, Luca replied without looking back. His grip on her hand was firm, reassuring, yet commanding. Stay close and don't speak unless I tell you to. Elena nodded, following his lead. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she knew running would only get her killed. The light from Luca's small flashlight bounced off the walls, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. For a moment, Elena caught herself staring at him. This man, feared by so many, was guiding her through darkness, protecting her without a word of complaint. You're surprisingly calm, she whispered, despite the fear. I've survived worse, Luca said simply, his eyes focused ahead. There was no arrogance, just control. You? Not so much yet. Her stomach twisted. She realized how exposed she was in every sense, not just physically when he had first found her, but now emotionally, too. Somehow, being in his presence, even in terror, made her feel alive. A sudden noise ahead made her freeze. Footsteps echoed lightly from somewhere above, and she could hear faint voices speaking in low tones. They're still searching, Luca murmured. Elena's pulse spiked. We can't just keep hiding forever. No, he said, his voice low and dangerous. We won't hide. We'll strike if we have to. But first, we get out. They reached a turn in the tunnel. Luca paused, scanning the darkness ahead. The garage is just ahead. Once we're there, we can disappear. You'll be safe, at least for now. Elena swallowed hard. Safe, from them? He gave her a small, half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. Safe is relative, but yes. You won't die tonight. A shiver ran down her spine, not entirely from fear. Something about the way he said it, the calm certainty in his voice, sent heat rushing through her chest. As they moved forward, the tunnel ended in a heavy metal door. Luca pressed a hidden latch, and it swung open silently. Bright lights from the garage revealed several sleek black vehicles waiting. Elena's stomach dropped. They weren't just escaping, they were stepping into the lion's den, prepared for whatever waited outside. Luca glanced at her one last time before they stepped out together. Stay close, he warned. And remember, not everyone is who they seem tonight, smiling face with horns. The garage door closed silently behind them, plunging Elena and Luca into the dim light of several black SUVs. Engines hummed quietly, waiting for the signal to move. Outside, the city streets were eerily empty, but Elena knew danger was never far behind. They're already out there, Luca muttered, scanning the surrounding windows. His jaw tightened, and for the first time since she'd met him, Elena noticed the raw edge of tension beneath his calm. Out there? She whispered. Yes, he said sharply. They know we're leaving. They've blocked the exits ahead. We'll have to fight our way through if we want to get clear. Elena's stomach dropped. Her hand tightened around the towel she still had wrapped around herself. This was no longer just a blackout or a simple encounter, this was a war. Luca stepped forward to the nearest SUV, opened the door, and motioned for her to get inside. Stay low, he commanded. Follow my lead. Don't speak unless I tell you to. She obeyed immediately, her heart racing. From the garage entrance, headlights flashed, and shadows moved along the edges. Black SUVs, too many to count, emerged from the darkness, menacing silhouettes of Luca's rivals. Elena's breath caught. She had never been so close to real danger in her life. Hold on, Luca said calmly, yet with a sharp undertone that made her pulse spike. He started the engine of the SUV. Remember, this is my territory now. They'll respect it, or they won't survive. The first vehicle outside began accelerating toward them. Luca's SUV shot forward, tires screeching lightly on the asphalt. Elena could see men jumping from shadows, weapons drawn, moving with deadly precision. "Why are they doing this?" she asked, panic threading her voice. "They want me dead," Luca replied simply, his eyes cold, unwavering. "And anyone with me is a target, including you." Elena's chest tightened. Her mind screamed at her to hide, run, anything, but she couldn't leave him. Not now. Shots rang out, echoing between buildings. Glass shattered. Sparks flew as a rival SUV tried to ram them. Luca maneuvered expertly, avoiding each attack, moving with the calm precision of a predator in his territory. And through it all, Elena couldn't tear her eyes from him. The same man who had terrified her hours ago was now risking everything to keep her alive. The first wave of attackers faltered under Luca's tactics, and Elena realized she was beginning to understand why he was feared by everyone in the city. But even as the chaos unfolded, a small thought crept into her mind. She wasn't just terrified of him anymore. She was drawn to him. Even as bullets tore through the night, and the city burned around them. Smiling face with horns. The first light of dawn filtered weakly through the garage windows, painting the black SUVs in soft gold. Outside, the city was waking, unaware of the chaos that had unfolded just hours earlier. Elena leaned against the SUV's door, her body still trembling from adrenaline. The battle on the streets had ended almost as suddenly as it began. Luca's rivals had retreated, leaving only scattered cars and broken glass behind. Yet the tension in the air lingered. Every shadow, every sound made Elena jump. Luca stood a few feet away, checking the SUVs and scanning the surrounding streets. His composure had returned, but there was a weight in his eyes she hadn't seen before, a mixture of exhaustion and calculation. You did all of that," Elena whispered, still holding the towel around her. "Alone, mostly." Luca glanced at her, a small smirk touching his lips. "Mostly," he admitted. His voice was calm, but she could sense the raw edge beneath it. "And you?" Elena blinked. "Me? I just followed." "Good choice," he said. His gaze softened slightly. "Not everyone survives this night by just following." A quiet moment passed. Elena realized she was standing too close, her heartbeat slowing but still unsteady. She had survived, yes, but not without noticing something dangerous growing inside her: curiosity, fear, and desire. Luca turned toward her fully. "You could leave now," he said quietly. "Walk away from all this, go back to your life." Elena's stomach sank. She wanted to, she needed to, but she also knew she couldn't. Something about him, the way he moved, the way he protected her, made her chest tighten with emotions she couldn't name. I don't think I can," she admitted. Luca's eyes darkened, but this time it wasn't anger, it was certainty. "Good," he said softly. "Because I don't want you to." Elena's breath hitched. He stepped closer, the intensity in his gaze making her pulse race. She remembered the shadows in the spa, the gunfire, the danger, and yet, here he was, still standing beside her, unshaken, unyielding, and impossibly magnetic. The distant sounds of the city began to swell, but in that quiet garage, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. "You realize," she whispered, "that nothing is normal anymore." "Normal is overrated," Luca said, almost teasingly. Then his voice softened, lower, intimate, "and neither is us." Elena's heart skipped again. She realized, in that moment, that the night had changed everything. What began as an accidental encounter in a blackout had become something dangerous, and impossible to ignore. And she knew one thing for certain: leaving him was no longer an option. Smiling face with horns. By the time the sun fully rose, the city had returned to its usual rhythm, unaware of the chaos from the night before. Elena walked beside Luca through quiet streets, the adrenaline of the previous hours fading, leaving a strange mix of relief and tension. She finally dared to glance at him. He looked as composed as ever, yet there was a softness now in his eyes when he looked at her, a hint that the night had changed him too. "You should go back to your life," he said, his voice low, measured. "Go back to work, to your routines, to safety." Elena shook her head. "I can't. After everything, after tonight. I can't pretend this didn't happen." Luca studied her carefully, the corners of his mouth twitching into a faint smile. "Good," he murmured. "Because I don't want you to." They reached the garage where his vehicles were parked. A sleek black SUV waited for them, engine humming quietly. Luca held the door open for her, an unspoken invitation, and a test. Elena climbed inside, and the smell of leather and faint cologne enveloped her. For a moment, she simply sat, processing the whirlwind of the night. Luca slid in beside her. His presence was overwhelming, commanding. Yet beneath the intimidation, there was the unmistakable trace of something softer, a protective instinct, almost tender, directed solely at her. "You realize," he said after a pause, "that things won't go back to how they were." Elena nodded. "I know. And I don't want them to." Luca's eyes darkened, intense and unreadable. "Good. Because this, what we have now, it's dangerous, complicated, and not meant for ordinary people. But it's ours." Elena's pulse quickened. She could feel the truth in his words. She had survived a night of danger and chaos, and now she was stepping willingly into a world she had only glimpsed, Luca's world. A world of power, secrecy, and risk, but also of protection, dominance, and undeniable desire. Luca started the engine and glanced at her. "Welcome," he said, his tone almost possessive, "to the only life you'll want from now on." As they drove into the city streets, Elena realized that the night had been more than survival. It had been a beginning. And for the first time, she didn't want to run. Smiling face with horns.